You ready? Are we ready? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular council meeting for Tuesday, February the 20th. It's currently 7:02. Before we get started, the Village of Anmore would like to open our meeting by recognizing the many Indigenous peoples of our area, including the following First Nations with communities that are located in the region that we now know as Metro Vancouver. They would be the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Coquitlam. Further, we would like to honor the important place in history occupied by the many territorial keepers of these lands and waters around us since time immemorial. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Approval of the agenda. Someone to move the recommendation? Moved. Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. I'd like to open up to public input. Matters raised here are for the council's consideration, should be constructively focused on agenda items only. Please limit comments to a 2-minute and save any questions for question period later in the evening. Is there anybody that would like to come forward for public input? Did you?
Just lightly, right?
Is that, if you can?
I was a little bit too hard on the dial here. Anyway, we have a great opportunity, and I'm speaking to an agenda item that happens a little bit further on about the letter that we received from ICONA. I find this very interesting and encouraging. I think that they're giving you back your power, and I encourage council to take advantage of that and do a really good, thorough consultation with the community about what they really mean when they come up here and speak about affordable housing. I would like to know what that is in dollars so we can all consider that. Same thing with concerns about traffic. How much traffic is the concern? We need to hear that from people. The other piece that I was wondering about is I'm not really clear why. I've never seen it before, but I can be corrected, but that a developer actually is telling the community, in effect, through you, what we can do and what we can't do. Generally, when I've watched someone make a presentation, council has been very circumspect with really good questions, and I've seen lots of developers follow right back out with their briefcases and come back with a new proposal. And for some reason, that hasn't been the way, but I think it can be the way now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody? If you could just start off with your name and
Mr. Mayor, my name's Sterling Sunley. I live at 2630 Sunnyside Road here in Anmore. Mr. Mayor, Council, I'm not going to say much because I've tabled a letter, or at least I've handed a letter to administration, which I would hope would be tabled for information purposes for the benefit of Council. It is regarding item number D, 11D on the item of new business, and that's relating to the Spirit Park expansion concept plan. As I say in my letter, it is the proposed routing will land directly at the end of my driveway. And my concern, apart from personal considerations, is that it is the single most unsafe location to position an intersection. If you stand where it's going to be and you look north, you won't be able to see cars that are coming from Sunnyside, or rather from East Road. If you stand where I am and you look south, you will not, as I know every time I pull out of my driveway, see cars that are coming up that hill. It should be moved, if at all, it should be moved further north, I believe, and that I realize may come at the loss of some of the planned planting of new trees, but believe me, you are going to, as you already have had, accidents in that location, and nobody wants to open their front window and see police and ambulances. With that, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public input before we move on to the regular agenda? Okay. Adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting held on February 6, 2024. Could I have someone to move the recommendation? The adoption moved, seconded. Any discussion? See none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Is there any business arising from the minutes? No? No? Okay, we'll move on to consent agenda. Any council member who wishes to remove an item for further discussion, so it may do so at this time. Anybody want to? I'm going to be removing 7B. Anything else? No? No? Okay. Could I get someone then to move the consent agenda, which consists of 7A? Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. We'll now move on to 7B, a copy of the letter dated February 2nd, 2024, and received on February 6th, 2024 from Icona Properties. I just wanted to give residents a bit of background on this letter. The letter is from Greg Moore, the President and CEO of Icona Properties Limited, that has been shared as part of tonight's agenda package. I'd like to provide a bit of context about this letter and when we received it. First, the letter is dated February 2nd, 2024, but the village only received the letter at 5:17 on February 6, 2024, just 40 minutes prior to our last council meeting. This did not give us any time to review the letter or consider its contents before the meeting, and I think a bunch of us up here never even got an opportunity to read it. In addition to the short notice leaving us no time to review the letter prior to the last council meeting, my overarching concern is that Icona Properties Limited has made a request of council that are not consistent with best practices for planning processes such as this. Simply put, it would not be appropriate for council to provide Icona with any assurance regarding the commitments in its demanding in the letter at this OCP amendment application is currently under review and considered by council. The proposed OCP amendment will be considered through a planning process that includes best practices in terms of technical studies, assessments, legislative process, and community engagement. And we are also considering how a neighborhood plan would be incorporated into this process to provide council and our community with more clarity on what is being proposed. As far as accusations of delays putting the project in jeopardy, council granted first reading of the OCP bylaw amendment related to Icona's application on December 5th, 2023. This was followed immediately after the holiday season break by a Committee of the Whole meeting on January 9th, 2024. The Committee of the Whole meeting was dedicated just to Icona's application to provide an opportunity to discuss, review the application with council, and ask any questions, because again, we're all fairly new to this. The Committee of the Whole, just to make everybody aware, is not a decision-making body. Instead, a summary report was brought forward to the February 6th, 2024 regular council meeting and included a recommendation from staff to seek direction on the creation of a terms of reference for a neighborhood plan. It's worth noting that Placemark, the planning consultants working for Icona, recommended a neighborhood plan as part of this process. Placemark's input at the Committee of the Whole emphasized that the neighborhood plan is a critical component for gaining clarity of what future development will look like in the area and to use a more accurate data for technical studies, assessments such as traffic impacts. As well, Placemark submitted a draft terms of reference and community engagement recommendation to the village on behalf of Icona on January 19th, 2024. Village staff replied the next business day to advise Placemark that staff would be seeking direction on council on next steps, which may include a terms of reference, as well as any direction recommendations for community engagement. So I want to make a few things clear. We are making this application a priority. We are adhering to best practices in community planning, and council will not be pressured into making commitments before it completes review and consideration of the application. However, we also have other business to manage as a village, and we will not rush a decision when it needs due care, consideration, and review of technical studies and community input. To this end, I will be making a recommendation regarding a response to Icona's letter on February 2nd, 2024. I also wanted to stress very clearly that this letter, although it did get onto social media before, under proper procedures would come forward at tonight's council meeting, as we do with all correspondence being received. So the recommendation that I have right now to put forward is that council directs staff to provide a response to the letter dated February 2nd, 2024 from Icona Properties Limited, reaffirming that it is not appropriate for council to provide any assurance requested in the letter, as this OCP amendment application is currently under review in consideration of council, and will be considered through a planning process that includes best practice in community planning, legislative requirements, and community engagement components. So that's the recommendation I have on there, if I could get someone to move it. This is for a letter to go back to Icona Properties. Moved and seconded. I'll open it up for any discussion. Okay. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Okay, we'll now move on to, we have no items. 9A, Building Relocation Policy Number 77. Report dated February 16th, 2024 from their Manager of Development Services attached. And I have to say this certainly raised my eyes a little bit. This is an interesting one, but fascinating. So I'm going to put it over to Mr. Boyd.
Thank you, Your Worship. I had a similar shock when it first came across my desk also, but pleasantly surprised that this is actually becoming more of a thing throughout the Lower Mainland and within BC about sustainability and moving of buildings for reuse. So our existing building bylaw actually does have a little bit of reference to it, but not much context following it. So, am I okay? Everyone okay? Everyone hear me? No? Can't hear me at all? There you go. Okay, there you go. Okay, so here today to talk a little bit more about how we will a policy about how we should respond to relocation of buildings within.
If I can, maybe I'll just lay the table a little bit
Sure.
first. So what has happened here is that somebody has bought a lot in Anmore, and they want to move their existing house to Anmore. Kind of a unique situation. So anyway, back to Mr. Boyd.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the owners of Lot B, 2345, which is a recent infill lot, have come forward and asked for the process on how to relocate a building within Anmore. And we reviewed our building bylaw, and our building bylaw has Part 23, which literally just says, except for a new manufactured housing, a building is not permitted to be moved without first obtaining a building permit. And second part, a building is not permitted to move into a village without first obtaining approval by a resolution of council. So that's the first part tonight, is to ask for a resolution from council if this proponent may be allowed to actually move a building into the village. But having done some more research on this, most municipalities actually have another policy which goes along with moving a property, and it means that the proponent knows what the expectations are of them prior to actually moving a building. Right now, we don't have any expectations other than getting a resolution from council. And again, coming for a resolution from council, I should provide some context of why you should, what is required and what not. So the best way to move this forward was, I believe, to make a policy for future proponents to be able to know what the expectation is and know what the resolution would mean if you provide a resolution tonight for someone to move a building forward. So attachment 1 to the report here, I'll just quickly do a brief overview. So obviously the purpose is for relocating buildings moving forward. The scope is important. There's different types of buildings that you can construct under different CSA codes and building codes and whatnot. And so we're trying to capture all buildings here except for mobile homes, because mobile homes typically will fit on a flatbed trailer and they won't cause too many difficulties moving them to within a municipality. However, pre-constructed buildings are normally larger, there are oversized loads, there are other logistical challenges which normally come with them. So we're looking at saying anything other than a mobile home will be required to meet policy 77 moving forward. So the application process will move it along with the building permit process, so there will be in streams and they have to meet the policy as well as all the other requirements for a building permit. So the criteria for approval, they have to comply with the zoning and land use. They have to have assurance of the structural integrity and compliance with the building code, minimal environmental impact of the relocation process. So to give you some kind of context to that, if someone wanted to move a building into the municipality, but we had to chop down 20 trees to achieve that, that isn't a sustainable approach. We'd likely fail that on that approach. Other piece is just provision of necessary utilities and infrastructure for the site, and also a transportation plan. Again, the transportation plan to ensure that there's adequate facilities to be able to move the structure and the size of it and whatnot. And so also there's a caveat here, because sometimes the building might not be that big, might be pretty straightforward. It provides the person responsible for the development services can waive one or all of the submission requirements if required. So again, trying to make the process a little bit elastic if required, if something doesn't make sense. If we're asking for all these things and it can fit on a flatbed trailer, let's just say, and it's a pretty easy transportation. Just talk about transportation logistics. Number 7, site preparation and installation. Again, this is ensuring that the site is ready and prepped for the relocation of the building. What we wouldn't want to do is see a building get moved to Anmore and just sit there and rot. So it has to be ready and available to be put down there. We cover off liability and insurance. Basically, we're asking to make sure that the village is indemnified against any damage or any problems that might occur with a relocation. Fees and charges, the applicant is responsible for all the costs associated with relocation, including the permit, inspections, and infrastructure modifications. Our fees and charges bylaw actually has a line item as of today of $50,000 bond for a relocation of a building. So we might look into the costs as we move one to see if that is appropriate or not moving forward. So we might come back with another report to council if it's found to be too much, too little, whatever. I'll bring back a report. And we have any penalties if people don't meet the requirements, and then we reserve the right for amendments, and then issuance of a permit. So once a permit, the proponent has met all the requirements, the person can then issue the permit along with the building permit. So that is generally what the policy has in store for us. I don't know if you have any questions, or I can make the
I would, if you could read your
recommendation.
recommendation, please.
For sure. That council adopt policy 77, building relocation, and that council approve the movement and placement of a building onto lot 2345 lot B Sunnyside Road, provided the requirements set out in policy 77 are met, and that council direct staff to prepare an amendment for council's consideration of Anmore's building bylaw 583-2018 to reflect the delegation to staff consistent with policy 77, building relocation.
Can I get someone to move that recommendation? Seconded. I'll open up for discussion.
Of course. Of course.
Councillor Wevering.
Okay, so I come at this from different perspectives. As a member of the Zero Waste Committee, Metro Van has actually provided property adjacent to the transfer station to store houses, particularly from some neighborhoods in Coquitlam that are being zoned high rises. So there's some perfectly good houses. So they're encouraging developers to move the houses, and they're trying to sell the houses. I think Nickel Brothers is involved too. Nickel Brothers does most of the moving. And this used to be a big thing in Anmore. I live in a house that was moved from Point Grey. I know that because they found plumbing inspection certificate in the walls of my house from Point Grey from 1922. And if you look at the Birchwine subdivision, probably half the houses there were moved, most of which came from IOCO. And I don't think there were any permits in 1960. I think they got a truck, a bunch of guys, a case of beer, and they drove it up the hill. So I'm glad to say that we're going to have some actual policies and some rules in place. But I support it 100%. I think it's great to repurpose these buildings because, we understand everyone is densifying, including possibly us. But there's probably, for quite a while, there's going to be lots of room for this kind of thing in Anmore.
Any other comments? Councillor Richardson.
Yeah, like Councillor Werink, I'm complete support of this. What I would like to see in the policy, though, is clarification on what is a building, because unfortunately right now, a building is a structure, and a structure is everything under our building permit. So if you move a dollhouse into Anmore, you are technically have to get council permission to do so based on the definition. So the policy should really clarify what is and what isn't under this moving thing. Like a tent is currently covered or a kiddie pool is currently covered. And it's a bit ridiculous, actually. So if the policy covers all that, that'd be fantastic.
If I may, we can relook at that if we pass the resolution tonight for the bylaw of 583. That is our building bylaw, and that's something we can definitely look at as the definition of the building and how that will respond to your question, for sure.
Good. Councillor Trowbridge.
Yeah, I'm definitely in support of this. Repurposing buildings makes a lot of sense, but relative to the policy, it would be nice to have some clarity on hours and days of move so that we are minimizing impact on residents who have to get to work or get to places like that. And I know it talks about transportation, Chris, but if we could just see if we can find windows to least impact our residents.
Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah,
Boyd.
so we could again review the building bylaw as part of that, and I suspect, Councillor, that what you're asking for is to have them outside of normal kind of working hours or on weekends for a relocation requirement?
I
Only
think
if it makes sense. If it escalates the cost of the move to a prohibitive way, then I think we need to have some clarity on which way it's coming into the village. For example, maybe it comes in Sunnyside during work hours so that the exit out of East Road is the more efficient, or things like that.
I suspect the relocation of the building wouldn't happen at the height of commuting hours as well, just from the cost perspective from the proponent as well. So, but I understand the comment, and we'll review that as part of the building bylaw review.
Yeah, most of these are done in the middle of the night when traffic is at a minimal. But I do think that there needs to be part of this a very significant public engagement as to what's happening, what's going to be occurring at certain timelines, and that to make people aware. So I'm certainly very much in favor of this. To take something away from the landfill and repurpose it, I think is amazing. And again, it's the type of housing that is really being appealed for up here right now. And that, so I'm very, on so many things, I'm checking different boxes in support. So I just think the big thing is the public engagement needs to be very.
Can I just clarify the comment, public engagement? Did you talk about informing the public that the building will be moved within the municipality?
I think there has to be a week beforehand as to what roads are going to be affected, what traffic control is going to be there, effects on if hydro lines need to be repurposed during that time, all those sorts of things. So
Yeah, I agree.
yeah.
That could be a big word there, so
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify.
Good. Okay, see no further comments or questions. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Boyd. We'll now move on to new business. Notice of motion, Anmore procedure bylaw review submitted by Councillor Cryer. I'm supposed to refer to Michelle to introduce the Councillor Cryer and the introductory comments.
Yep,
Michelle.
thank you. So this is a notice of motion that Councillor Creer will be introducing, but as you can see in the agenda, there's no opportunity for discussion or decision tonight. This is just a notice that will be on the subsequent agenda.
Councillor Cryer.
Thank you, Michelle. Can everyone hear me? No echoing or screeching? This is just really a simple review based on the new changes in provincial regulation. I think it's time that we just do a complete overview to ensure we have best practices for our procedure bylaw. We'll be able to dig into it a little further once it does come up, but for right now, it's just a request to review the entire procedure for accuracy and best practices.
Is with the notice motion, do we have a resolution or just simply notice?
No, it's just the motion of the
Okay.
notice that's included on the agenda. The recommendation will actually come on the next one.
Perfect, good. Well, thank you, Ms. Councillor Cryer, for bringing this forward. We'll now move on to Anmore South OCP Amendment Engagement Strategy Report dated February 16th, 2024 from Mickelson Consulting Incorporated is attached. Ms. Mickelson, all tanned. Welcome back.
Thank you. Checking the sound.
We're
These are
just
very
going to
directional
load the
mics.
presentation.
They're just pulling up the presentation.
Is the sound better out back? And can everybody hear everything all right? Good.
I can talk a little bit while it gets pulled up. I can always talk.
You can start if you want. I
Okay.
don't know.
I'll get going a little bit because the intro is general anyway. So this community engagement plan is really a framework that I'm presenting. It doesn't have details around scheduling and that kind of thing because it would align with what other council directs on terms of the actual process and planning. But the focus of the community engagement would be on the official community plan, amendment bylaw number 686-2023, and on the Anmore South neighborhood plan being proposed by Icona Properties. So it's a very focused community engagement. And we would want to adhere to IAP2 values and principles of best practices for community engagement. So IAP2 is the International Association of Public Participation. And though they have established some very good standards in terms of how community engagement should be done, and we would recommend that we follow those. As I mentioned, this whole process would also be aligned with the planning process. So it really dovetails with what's happening in planning as it goes along. And that's where I talk about it being an iterative process to some degree, because it'll be, as information comes available, you do some engagement, and then information comes available, you do some engagement. So, and then the outcomes of the engagement are shared with council and the community so that everybody's aware of, here's what we learned. It's also important to note that the community engagement forms part of the data and information that council receives in terms of its decision-making process, along with other inputs like things like the technical studies.
I think we have it up now.
I know. Now I have to. Oh. Stop clicking. Okay. Okay, go. So this covers off what I was just talking about in the sense that this is this application from Icona and the relevant changes that are being proposed for the official community plan, as well as the amount of information that would be considered as part of a neighborhood plan. That's a lot of work, and it's going to involve discussions, and my recommendations are fairly standard for what you do in a comprehensive planning process like what's before this Village of Anmore, but even more so, these are some very big changes that are being proposed and being considered. And there's not a lot of communities. Anmore's still so young, really. Most communities have a much broader OCP, official community plan is OCP, that covers off a lot of these things, like some of the housing that's being considered in this, which isn't even existing right now in Anmore. So this is there's a lot of groundwork to be done. And what I'm proposing, if you want to move ahead, is that we look at our audiences and we understand how do we want to get them involved, and what, part of it is that there's a lot of interested audiences in this process, but our primary focus is going to be with Anmore residents, Anmore Council Advisory Committees, there's community groups and organizations in Anmore, and also First Nations who have traditional territory within Anmore's boundaries. As well as an additional part of the engagement, there will be intergovernmental meetings and stuff that would be going on as part of this for regulatory service impacts, that kind of thing. The other thing that I'd like to cover is what are our targeted outcomes, if you want to go to the next slide. So one of the biggest things we want to achieve with this is broad representation from the community. This is one where we really are asking Anmore residents to take the time to be informed and to participate in the various ways that they can share input. And people like to share input in different ways, so you're going to hear a little bit about the different ways we would do that, because not everybody's comfortable talking in front of a group. Not everybody's comfortable participating in big meetings. Some people want to give it on a survey or at an open house. So we use different tools so that people feel comfortable and also will take the time. So achieving broad representation is a big part of this, because it is something where we want to hear from as many residents as possible. We also want to build awareness and understanding about what's being proposed. So what is in that application in terms of changes to Anmore South Lands and to the official community plan? What are the technical studies and analysis that are being done, and what are we hearing from the subject matter experts in those studies? And then also, what is the process to review and consider the application? Because as you've heard even again tonight, as the mayor articulated, that there is a lot involved in this kind of a process. There's best practices to follow, and we want the community to understand, here are the steps that we'll be going through for this. So the other part is to gain insight into the community's perspectives. So this is kind of that first part, building awareness and understanding. When you look at the community engagement, that's the inform piece. The next part is what is called the consult piece, and this is where we want to understand the community's perspectives. We want them to be able to ask questions and get answers. We want them to be able to share their ideas and their priorities and their concerns on the things that are being presented to them. And we also want them to be able to provide feedback on ICONA's vision and how it would be implemented. So these are the ways that the community gets involved to talk to us, and we learn from what they want to tell us and bring that forward. So there are some challenges that I also identified in the community engagement plan. If you want to go to the next slide. So one is that the potential confusion related to village-led community engagement versus ICONA's process. So ICONA has been out in the community, but this is the first time the village has really got out into community engagement on this application. So we want to make sure that it's clear, who's doing what and which is the village. And also we don't want to fatigue the community with having a lot of engagement done by two different groups. So we're going to have to be conscientious about that. If ICONA continues to do its own engagement, which of course it can, I just want to make sure that we're cognitive of the fact that the community understands when it's coming from the village. There's a lot of technical information, and those technical studies need to be explained in ways that are understandable to those of us who are not experts in those different areas. It's going to be important to hear from the majority of Anmore residents, but we also know that people are really busy. So we have to figure out ways to make it easy for them. And also, it's a complex process with multiple steps and protocols, so it takes time. And that's where I was getting at the fact that the planning process takes time, and then you interweave the community engagement throughout that. So to the next one, and I talk about the methodology overall, is starting with inform. So we want to be able to share information proactively with the community as it becomes available. And we recognize that it takes time to get these different things in place, but we want to be able to share details on the OCP amendment and the proposed neighborhood plan if that's something that's going to go forward. We want to also explain how the official community plan and the neighborhood plan guide development, because not everybody is involved in local government and understands those processes and what they mean. We want to make sure that the overall process, sharing what's being done now, but also have people understand what's coming next, what also would have to be done. As an example, this isn't getting into any zoning bylaws right now. That's a future policy. If these first couple of steps move forward, that would also have to be done. So helping people understand, how does this go from here to here? As well as outcomes from the various technical studies and analysis. And then we want to tell them how they can stay informed, how they can get involved. So those are some of the focus areas in general around inform. The next slide. And one of the things we want to do is we want to use a lot of different communication tactics to reach people. So some of them are what I call a push tactic. So that's a communication method where we push the information out to people, like we send it to them in the Anmore Advisor that gets dropped in their mailbox, or we send flyers and information like we've done previously again, that gets sent to their home. Other things are more pull, like you need to come and, come to an open house, or you need to attend a information sessions, or you need to go to the village's Facebook page. So there's a mix of tactics because we're going to capture people in different audiences in different ways. Some people like to read a handout. Some people like to go and look at it online. Some people are comfortable going to Facebook and using email. Some people are not. So we're going to share information. The recommendation is in different ways. It's also somewhat dependent on the nature of the information, because some information just needs more space to explain. So a postcard is easy if we're just inviting people to an open house, but a direct mail or a flyer or a newsletter is going to be a better way to share more complex information. Could go next. So the methodology around consult. Big piece here, again, as I've said, is to provide lots of ways for people to discuss, ask questions, or share input and feedback. And I actually recall that came up once where someone from the community said, please make sure we have lots of ways, because not everybody's comfortable coming to a microphone to talk to council. And that's exactly what we do in best practices for community engagement. We make sure there's different methodologies that they can use. So the topics that we'd be looking at would be feedback, for example, on ICONA's vision for Anmore South and their neighborhood plan. Feedback on the proposed bylaw amendments that are being considered. Input on priorities and concerns in the community that they would like to see addressed. And feedback and questions on the technical studies, being able to come and get somebody who's done the study to explain to them some of the technical details if needed. Next slide. And again, we use different tactics to do that. So one of the things that's really key on this is workshops, either in person and virtual. In the old days of community planning, you would have heard these called charrettes. So council might be more familiar with hearing it that way. But basically, they're a workshop. They're an opportunity for people to come and really dig in a bit more and have more in-depth discussions rather than just checking things off on a survey or even a few minutes at an open house. So we're looking at workshops and meetings, small group meetings. We have organizations that we can meet with. We could have neighborhood meetings. The scope of the work and the amount of the meetings is really going to be dependent on the level of interest in the community. If people in different neighborhoods want to set something up and go out and meet with them, that's what we can do. If people want to attend the workshops, that's what we can do. If there's not a lot of interest, then there's not as many meetings. So it is going to be driven in large part by interest, and again, this is dependent on community members. The timing is also dependent on when information becomes available. So when do studies come out? When do we get new updates on the process, that kind of thing. So what we'd be looking at, as I said, for more in-depth discussion would be workshops, advisory committee meetings, small group neighborhood meetings. But even with those discussion meetings, we use things called feedback forms, because you could be sitting around a table with people, but not everyone's super comfortable speaking up, especially if there's large, kind of louder voices around the table. A feedback form gives people a mechanism to share their input regardless. And then there's also open houses. So generally what you'll do is you'll have the more in-depth discussion through these workshops where we can have, a couple of hours to sit down together. And then we take that information and we essentially pull together the key themes of what we've heard. And then we have an open house and we give people a chance to see the highlights. Here's what your neighbors said that they thought was important. And you kind of test those results through things like open houses and community surveys. And then, as I said, the other thing that's on here is community idea boards. So like if there's a community event, you can have a community idea board where people can put stuff up. So these are common tactics that are used for community engagement during planning processes. The one that's on the list there at the bottom is a public hearing, and that is a required one. That is a legislative process that would have to be done as part of the bylaw process. So the final slide here relates to the schedule. So as I said at the start, this is really a framework. This is not going into detail about exactly when the meetings would happen or which meetings would take place or where they would, because it's going to be aligned with the process as directed by council. These are recommendations that are best practices to apply in a community planning endeavor. And it's also iterative, because we will, as I said, we'll get some information from people in workshops, and then we go out to the community at an open house and share it and get more information. Then we might get updates on technical studies. We bring that back out to the community and hear from those. So it's not like a one and done kind of a deal. And each phase of a community planning process tends to take months. And as I said, the community engagement just gets interwoven with that.
Good. Thank you for the overview. I'm going to open it up for council with some questions before we get a recommendation. So I'll start on my right. Councillor Cryer.
Thank you, Mayor McEwen, and thank you, Ms. Mickelson. I have a lot of questions.
Okay.
That was a lot, and it sounds like it would take months or years to do everything that you just described. Do you have an idea of, like, shortest to longest? Are you...
Well, a lot of it is actually not the community engagement that takes as much time. It's more a community planning process takes a long time, because the community engagement actually dovetail with the planning process. So if you're doing a series of workshops, the amount of time it takes to do those workshops will be dependent on how many people are interested. So you usually have between 15 and 18 people per workshop. If we go on what happened last time in your community, we had, I think, 6 or 7 workshops, and we did them in the space of a couple of weeks. So it's not the community engagement, it's more the fact that it dovetails with the planning process that takes time.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I find this all very vague, yet very detailed at the same time, if that makes sense. So you did say that what you're giving us is best practices. Is this what you're recommending that we do? Like, that is and I find the recommendation being quite vague, so I just would like to say that I feel like that recommendation really needs to be tightened up. It gets a little too vague, and we can, I guess, talk about that after maybe I get my questions answered.
Yeah. So one, I couldn't do a detailed communications plan because I don't have an operational process to work from yet. So the reason why we came to council is so that we could provide you with context is here are the kind of things that are typically done for a community engagement process or for a community planning process that's as comprehensive and is involving as much change and potential impact on a community. So the different tactics are outlined as opposed to a schedule because it really needs to align with what council directs. So for example, if a neighborhood plan isn't happening, then it's a different process. This is just, here's what you would do typically for community engagement. And and the recommendation is that these are the best practices to follow.
Okay. So this is an proponent-led OCP application, and that is what you're creating the communication plan for. What if this was a village-led communication plan? How would that differ from what you're doing right now?
This is what I'm recommending for the village-led community engagement.
Okay, so this is where I need some clarity, because what do other municipalities do for a proponent-led OCP amendment for community consultation? What is your knowledge of what that looks like?
Well, pretty much when there's a development, it's proponent-led. That's fairly standard for a developer to come in and make a recommendation for what they want to do. But regardless, it's still a neighborhood plan, and that is affecting your community, and it is still a change to your OCP that is affecting your future, which means that I would be recommending the same thing regardless whether it was a proponent-led or a village-led process.
Okay, so this is where I get extremely confused, because I've done some research with other municipalities, and the way it works, and I'm talking a variety of different sizes of communities. Granted, we're different in that we're entering into something that's never been done before. Most municipalities have a framework, so I recognize and understand that we need to do that. But what happens is that the proponent, or in this case, I guess it would be Placemark, sits down with village staff, and there is a conversation about what community engagement needs to be done. And then, is this a Chris Boyd question? Okay, let me just ask. Okay, so, and then what happens is the proponent takes that away. You come to an agreement on what you want to see. The village will be definitely doing their own community engagement over and above the public hearing that we're required to do. But also, the village will then bring in industry experts all of which are hired by the proponent. The proponent takes away, at the direction of council, staff, what they want done. The proponent does it, brings it back. Staff and the experts that we've hired, independent experts, look at all of it, say, this is great, you missed it, knowing full well we're not going to always get information that we like. They either take it away, staff thinks it's great, they present it to council, we move on. When I hear what you're saying, what I don't understand is why there's not a difference between village-led and proponent-led. I don't feel like it is in the best interest of the community for staff to take this on, especially when we get into a couple of things under tactics, specifically like an open house where we want to put up storyboards. I don't know that I can't see how you could even do that without engaging the proponent to speak to those boards. I don't know who wants to answer all of those questions.
I think we'll start with Mr. Boyd, and then we'll go back to Ms. Nicholson.
I understand the question, first off. It's a well-phrased question. So the best way to answer is it's a little from column A and a little from column B. The proponent will provide the storyboards, will provide the content. And so I think sometimes where it gets a bit misleading is the engagement strategy has to be first thing has to be on the proponent application. So whatever the proponent is putting the application forward, our engagement. Sorry, Mayor.
Can I just ask that we rename proponent to applicant?
Okay, the applicant, so the applicant would provide all of the technical input, the storyboards, all those kind of bits and pieces, right? And even to the point that their experts would likely be there to talk to their boards and their information. Okay, and I think where sometimes it kind of goes off the rails a little bit, the way people think about it is that it then becomes a piece of who, best way to describe this, who actually holds the information after the public information session and what have you. Sometimes it might just go to the proponent and then we get a report back, but other times, sometimes the municipality would be the receiver of the questionnaires, would review the questionnaires and put the report together and say, here's what we heard at the public house. So there's different ways of doing that. Sometimes it's just a proponent, like there was one back in April 2023, I think it was, whereas the municipality didn't have anything to do with that open house. We received the information afterwards of the questionnaire and the general themes, and that was it. But we didn't have like material, not access. That's the wrong word. We didn't take all the information and put the report together after the fact. Whereas if the municipality had it, we'd take that information. Therese would put the report together and present it back to council. Here's what we heard during this community engagement. Does that kind of answer your question?
The added piece I'd put to that is it's very difficult to compare what Anmore's grappling with. So when I've done community engagement for planning processes where a developer is putting an application in and there's already an OCP that outlines all the different housing types and whatever, and there's already a neighborhood plan that's established the vision for the area that are generally led by the local government, that's a different situation than what we have here. And I just cannot recommend to you that you hand off responsibility for the community engagement to the applicant. I strongly recommend that it be a village-led process. The village is going to have different priorities and different interests and different things that they need to understand from their community, and I just cannot recommend that you stand back from that. This is the best practice in these kinds of situations.
Right. And I'm not saying that the village stands back from it. In no way am I saying that. I am just saying that I don't think it is our role to take all of that on. I'm saying that you still have complete and total control of the process and that you work collaboratively with respectful conversation, like no egos. We both have the same common goal, which we do, but you just don't take on the entire responsibility of that. I don't, from everything I know and that I've learned about it, and I can give you examples, that it's just not the way it's done. And I don't know why, considering this is so new for us, that we would think that we could take all of that on. And I'm not saying we don't need to bring people in that understand it more than we do. I mean, there's not
Sorry, understand what? The plan,
the
the application?
entire process and the fact that what best practices are, we cannot possibly take that on as a village alone.
Okay, so I might not have explained well enough that we would absolutely be bringing subject matter experts in to
course.
actually share the technical information.
Right.
And as Chris mentioned, that, you know, Icona would be able to share, here's what they're, you know, that kind of thing.
Right.
Those are the experts on those. The community engagement piece is done by community engagement professionals who and one of the things you'll see I've recommended as well in there is that you have a professional research company that you work with to do a community survey and to assist with the development of the nature of the questions, because that's the profession versus having definitely the planning people. I know Chris has a planning team as well involved. So they're kind of two different pieces. And it comes down to, as I said, and I've been doing this for over 30 years, it's the community engagement for a neighborhood plan, this fundamental a change that is facing, you know, the community. I strongly recommend that the village be the one taking the lead in the discussions and the nature of the questions and the prompts and everything else that go with that.
And don't get me wrong, I agree with that. But do you understand where I'm questioning, like, how it takes place?
Maybe I'm not understanding the question, then I'm so sorry.
I think, let's sit down another time,
Oh, I'd
and
be
we
happy
can
to
talk
walk
more
through
about
with
it.
you. Yeah, I'd
Okay.
be happy to.
Okay, no, wait, I just want to make sure we covered everything. I think that's it for, I have a lot more questions, but that's it for right now.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
Move on to Councillor Webering.
I share some of Councillor Creer's concerns. We're not the experts in this, certainly not council. What we want to see is we want community engagement. We've got an applicant that has told us that they've done lots of community consultation and this is what the community wants. Well, of course, we can't take that from the applicant. We need to take it from our staff. So I just supportive of the most efficient way possible, because we've been kicking this around for a long time. You know, before the last election, there were people that said they wanted the next council to decide this. Well, we're already a year and a half into our term. I want to get this done, a decision, yes or no, like we're going to do this or we're going to do that or we're not going to do anything. I'd like to get it done in our term. I think people expect that. So, you know, to Councillor Creer's points, I don't know what other communities do, but I think we should follow a similar process. It's a proven process. And as long as we're getting the input from the people and we're getting it through our staff, so every piece of information that we're getting that we need to make a decision may come from the applicant's consultants, but it's vetted by our staff and our experts, paid for by the applicant. And I read this a few times, and I think that's what's happening. Am I correct?
Well, and sorry, just yes, the idea here is that community engagement's ultimately seeking to get an informed community who have an opportunity to provide input. And another big part of it is that they have confidence that their information is being shared.
Right.
And that what they're sharing is, all of what they're sharing is being conveyed. So part of the process is having, you know, people won't come if they don't have confidence in the process. So that's the other part of it, that they feel that they're going to be heard and that the information they share is going to be conveyed.
Okay, good, thank you.
Councillor Richardson.
My question, can you hear me? My question's probably a little simpler. Like, the recommendation is to approve this plan as is. Can it be modified? Because when I go through the lists, which are, as Councillor Cryer said, quite detailed, can they be added to? Like, for example, target audiences. I think Imperial Oil should be on there. And with respect to some of the studies, I think there's other studies that should be done. But if we pass this, is these the only studies that can be done? So this can be modified in the future and added to. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's actually, for the intergovernmental and kind of that kind of piece of it, there's, that's kind of done more on a staff involvement level than that. But absolutely, ideas. And we get ideas from the community too sometimes that comes up where they'll say, hey, how about this?
Good. Councillor Trowbridge, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I do. I'm just hoping, and I believe I heard Therese say that this is going to be in lockstep with the process of the OCP amendment process, and if there is to be a neighborhood plan. I'm just hoping that we give everything the due diligence it deserves, but we have the capacity to move it along smartly because, as Councillor Weverink said, I think we owe it to the community to get something decided here, whether it's yes, no, modified, or doesn't go at all, or whatever it is. We need enough traction under the tires so that we'll feel comfortable putting the further investment that they need to put into it to give us a neighborhood plan, to give us more clarity on what it is we're trying to look at. So I'm hoping that I think the word you used, Therese, was dovetail. I'm hoping that we can have, when the schedule does get developed, that it doesn't lag the process or drag the process. I'm hoping we can move along appropriately but smartly.
Thank you. Councillor Cryer.
I guess I'm still, like, I'm not prepared to approve this recommendation. I'm also honestly a little surprised that was our only recommendation when typically we have an and multiple options. So I don't know what it should be. I don't know the answer to the question, but I am just one vote. So I'm gonna, I don't have any more questions though.
Anybody what other comments? I think the proposal that's ahead of us is just basically to endorse an engagement process that, as Councillor Richardson said, is very flexible in regards to what's there. I think there is generally some concern as to, when I read this, the level of detail, which was quite concerning to me, but I bet you there's a lot more detail that could go to it, and there's a lot that could come out of it. Again, I really noted at our last meeting the word proponent and the word applicant. I really do like the word applicant because they're applying to rezone their land from 1 acres to something different, which I think has been something that this council has been receptive to with the trends. There is a lot of work to be done here, and I don't want to downplay that at all. This is a significant change to our community, and we're going to be relying on a lot of the technical data because that's what I'm going to be really focusing on, because again, I look at things differently for this community. I don't look at 1 year or 5 years, but I look 10 or 20 years down the road. And as I've said, I have never been hung up on the amount of numbers of this applicant or what's there. I'm looking forward to that process playing out and seeing what's there. I have heard very loudly that the community wants to be engaged, and I think that's absolutely incredible. But they have to be done in a proper way so that people don't feel intimidated coming to a council meeting. People need to be respectful of other people's opinions. You know, I was somewhat shocked at the last meeting where somebody got up and said we shouldn't be listening to that certain person because they're a special interest group. We're all special interest groups. We should all be listening to everyone and doing it in a respectful way. We're not all going to agree, but I think if we have enough information to make proper decisions, I think this council is going to move forward in an appropriate way, whatever that way is. You know, we don't even know the financial aspect of what it's going to cost to service this site to be able to put this sort of development. So, as I've said all along, you know, we're so in the infancy stage right now. So, I think, you know, the challenge as well that we have from a council is that we have certain periods. We're not going to be doing a lot of open engagement through the months of July and August. That's not fair. People are traveling. But I want to stress to everybody in this room and that's listening tonight and that will look at this thing, this council is committed to getting residents' input, all input. You know, there's no special interest input here. This is all of our communities. So I really want to stress that. And I'm looking forward to doing it in a way that people really get engaged. You know, I have yet to come to one of the applicant-sponsored events because I didn't want to be seen there. I purposely stayed away, although I was very interested, because I didn't want people to perceive that I was there at the guise of the applicant. So, you know, I'm going into this with a completely open mind. I wish everybody would. Like I said at the last meeting, this property is going to get developed. You know, this has already been zoned residential property from quite some time. You know, when it was made a special study area, I was on council back in 2009 or 2010, seems like an eternity ago, where, again, our former mayor, you know, said we can do something special here. What that is, let's work as a community and figure out what that is. So, again, I'm going to support the engagement because I think it is very high level. I don't think it limits anything, but I do want to stress that there has to be a path that we go forward. It's not fair for our residents. It's not fair for the applicant. You know, I've been through this process with an applicant, and it's not gone well. And the applicant at the end of it came to me and said, you know what? I would have rather not gone through the process and just gone 1 acres, and I would have been sold my property and gone. You know, we were part of that. So, you know, people realize that the applicant is a big taxpayer as well. So that's why when we talk about prioritize, there's no special treatment here, but they are a significant landholder that we want to work with, as everybody does. So, anyway, the motion or the recommendation that's before us, I'm going to put it forth for a question. All those could I get someone to move the recommendation? Should we read the recommendation?
That council endorse the Anmore South OCP Amendment Engagement Strategy dated February 16, 2024 from Michelson Consulting Incorporated, and that staff be directed to initiate the plan.
Someone to move that? Moved. Could I get someone to second it? Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Sorry. Councillor Trowbridge, are you in favor of it? I saw your hand go up. Yeah, okay. And you want it recorded? Okay. Okay. It carries with Councillor Cryer in opposition. Okay, we'll now move on to 11C, the 2024 Anmore Community Grant Request. Report dated February 16th, 2024 from the Manager of Financial Services is attached. Ms. Martin.
Good evening to Mayor and Council. We're here to seek direction from Council regarding the approval of the community grant applications received for the 2024 budget year. The Village of Anmore has received 7 community grant applications for 2024. The combined total of all applications requesting Council's consideration is $10,162, with a total current budget for community grants of $7,000. Of our 7 applicants, or 7 applications, 2 were received from the Anmore Scouts. And I just wanted to clarify that in previous years, the Anmore Scouts received activity grants and not jamboree grants. So all the previous years, that should be moved down to their weekly activities. It was used for Scout activities. This is the first year that they are requesting a donation towards their jamboree trip. If council would like to go through the applications, some of the proponents are here, or applicants are here, and may be available to answer some questions for you.
Good. I just wanted to, just a couple points of clarity. So regarding the first applicant, which is the first Anmore Scouts, the 2025 Australia Jamboree trip, the Scouts have asked for $500, and that is seed money for a significant fundraising that's moving forward. The other one is the weekly activities, which is approximately, well, which is the grant that they asked for last year, which was $1,200. I also wanted to add that under the Anmore Garden Club, there was a proposal about a fairy garden. And that, I talked to Ms. Knauer, who's here. We're going to have a discussion because she will be involved in what will be coming up next, which is this whole Spirit Park sort of design and how that's going to lay out. So that won't be part of this, this grant process. I would imagine that we will, and that's about it. So I'll open it up to council if they want to have any discussions at this point. Anybody? Councillor Weberink?
Our budget is 7,000, correct? Okay, so we're a little bit over. I support all the organizations here. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I guess the only one I might struggle with here is the Friendly Forest Preschool Commercial Dishwasher. I think we need a commercial dishwasher too. So that'd be a bit, I would be in favor of, still awarding them some money as long as it was spent on that, provided they could fundraise the rest of it and they were kind of accountable to it. Might want to adjust the Anmore Scouts a little bit, but, maybe, up it to 1,500 inclusive of both asks total. And I think we'd have to take the rest of the money from somewhere else. I'm supportive of Quitlam Search and Rescue. I mean, we have to realize that Anmore, I think, is 75% wild wilderness, and lots of people get lost in it. We own that. It's Anmore, so we should be supportive of our search and rescue. And yeah, I think as long as we don't go over our budget, I'm in favor of making a few adjustments.
Councillor Richardson.
Like Councillor Weverink, I'm in favor of the Scouts. I used to be a Scout. I like the Garden Club. If that's discussed later, fair enough. Again, some of the numbers could change a bit. The restorative justice benefits the community as a whole, so I'm in favor of that. Quitlam Search and Rescue, yes, like they pull people off our mountains all the time. And the Anmore Elementary seems a bit high. The one that caused me concern, like Councillor Weverink, is this commercial dishwasher. I never heard of such a thing, so I looked it up. And sorry, maybe the proponent can speak to it, because I looked up Fraser Health, Vancouver Health, to try and actually figure out what daycares are required to do. And I didn't get any requirement for a commercial dishwasher. I got a list of 4 things that are all possible to do, unless you're a restaurant. If you're a restaurant, then a commercial dishwasher is required. So I could find, was it NSF ANSI 184 dishwashers for well under $1,000. And on Marketplace, I can get commercial dishwashers used for roughly the same amount of money. So I don't understand the need for a brand new commercial dishwasher. And it really makes, to me, no sense. But maybe I don't understand. Like, we're not preparing food, we're not doing sushi, we're not cooking chicken, whatever the heck happens to be, unless it's something at the Friendly Forest Preschool that I don't know. It's more of a food thing or something. But anyway, so I don't understand that one at all.
Councillor Cryer.
Thank you. Yeah, I support Scouts, Anmore Garden. restorative justice, definitely Coquitlam Search and Rescue. I have the same concerns with the commercial dishwasher for $4,000. I would, as Councillor Weberink mentioned, be willing to give a less amount of money, but I would want assurances that it is in fact going towards what they put their application in for. I also did not know what a buddy bench even was, but I love the idea of it. And I did a little Googling, and you can buy a lovely buddy bench at Home Depot for $1,000. So, and it looks just like all the really fancy ones. So, if there's somewhere to, cut a little bit to balance things out, we could take a little bit off of that, but it's not to say a $2,000 buddy bench wouldn't be superior. I don't really know what that would look like. But again, even if we take the commercial dishwasher down a bit, we still have some funds to spare. So that's, same page as my fellow counselors on that.
Councillor Trowbridge.
Yeah, basically the same page. I like the fact that the Scouts are looking for seed money to do their own fundraising for the 25 trip jamboree. So, I'm kind of have an entrepreneurial spirit. So I think I would be okay with either one, either what Councillor Weberink suggested, 15 all in, or the 17. I'm comfortable with both of those. Had the same exact concerns about the $4,000 dishwasher. I'm not in for that. And the rest I'm fine with.
So just in a matter of time, so I just wanted to go through it, and if I could, so I think everybody is fine with the Anmore Scouts, and again, they do so much around our community. Same with the Anmore Garden Club, the community, the Sierra at 437, it hasn't changed, is fine with that. The Coquitlam Search and Rescue seems to be fine at $1,000. If we were to take match the Anmore Elementary Pack from previous years to $1,500, and then we took $3,000 off of the Friendly Forest Preschool, that would bring us in under our budget again, which would probably be appropriate because there is significant money, as we said, coming forth in the budget to be spent in this building that's going to serve the entire community. So is that fine with everybody, or? Councillor Weber.
Yeah, so what does that add up to? That's just under about 6,700?
Yeah.
I would propose that we throw the extra 300 at Friendly Forest. So it would be 1,300.
On the premise that it
Yes.
goes towards a dishwasher?
Yeah.
Commercial grade?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is my math correct? You're an engineer. Is my math correct?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so with that change, do I have someone that it would come to about $7,000 in that? Yeah? Someone to move that?
So moved.
Seconded?
Can I just get a clarification on that resolution? That was 1,200, 500, 1,000, 437, 1,300, 1,000, and 1,500?
Yeah.
That's okay, thank you.
Does that come to just under $7,000?
6,937.
Okay. Good. So the motion would be that we follow that. Moved? Seconded? Seconded. Any further discussion? See none? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We got through that with the math. We're now on to 11D, Spirit Park Expansion Concept Plan. A draft Spirit Park Plan concept is attached for council review and consideration. Mr. Boyd, I'll pull it up. Is it possible to put it on the screen? Sorry.
I'll vamp for a few minutes while
Okay,
we try
okay.
and bring it up, just
Okay.
so the public can see it as well. So thank you, Your Worship. So I want to give a bit of an update on this plan. first question might be, where did this come from, and why is it in front of us as of right now? This is really kind of a staff-driven idea at this point in time. It's more to do with the Ravenswood realignment that we were provided resolution from council to start moving forward with a realignment. And obviously, as we realign Ravenswood, it will have impacts upon the rest of Spirit Park and the surrounding kind of area. So obviously, it's a one really major amenity within our village presently. So I think it's important that kind of come to council and have your thoughts on it. And then on top of that, I'd be looking for maybe a resolution or a recommendation from council at the end. Well, we can read one out about trying to get some public engagement on the park as well. Because again, I think it's a one real good functional park that we have this new facility here, and it's about the surrounding area to add more functionality to Spirit Park. So I'll just go through a really brief. It was a good idea, apparently. I'll just go through a little bit of a brief overview of the concept plan. This is a concept plan. Nothing is set in stone, obviously, at this point in time. It's more to help generate discussion moving forward. So we'll obviously start off at the existing community hub that's constructed, and the plaza area that we have on the plan that will be actually constructed in the next few weeks here as well. So that's kind of not quite off the table, but it's moving forward as part of a plan already, and we have grant funding to complete that section of Spirit Park currently. So then we then look at the rest of the park and how perhaps we could function out the rest of Spirit Park and how we might kind of create zones within it. So one of the things that most people bring up consistently about the hub is about the parking. The existing parking isn't really adequate for the purpose of the building into the future. So part of the process would be perhaps to claim part of Spirit Park to actually create a parking lot for the hub. The area shown presently would provide somewhere in the region of 50 to 60 parking stalls, to give you some idea of the space taken up right now. Obviously, we kind of removed Spirit Park, or the existing signage board that was in front of the hall previously as part of the construction of this municipality. We'd like to kind of put some more signage back in. One of the areas that was within the existing treed area out front next to Sunnyside Road did have a little small pump track included inside of it. So hence why there's kind of a pump track put back in there to replace what was there previously. And then we've kind of gone to an open lawn area next to the plaza, moving it down through the right-of-way, the Fortis right-of-way area, into more of a naturalized playground equipment. There'd be a bit of a change of grade there, fairly steep, because you want to try and keep it somewhat level from the plaza area down, so parents, what have you, can actually sit and be able to see their children play. And then again, more of a naturalized forest area and whatnot on the edges of the park to try and provide some more privacy to the existing residential buildings which are in and around there, and help replace trees which were lost as part of the clearing previously. So that's kind of generally the overview. And again, I just go back to what I said earlier of, I think it would be important for the public to provide feedback and input. We could have an open house. We could provide surveys online. We can solicit just via our website. I can come back with more of a strenuous answer to that engagement, what that might look like for council. But I just kind of wanted to get in front of you to see if this has legs and to see if council want to move this forward at all. There we go. I vamped just in time for the presentation there.
Good. Well, I'm going to just, I'll just follow up with a couple things. We had a question right at the start of the meeting about the traffic concerns on Sunnyside. You know, when we first thought of this proposal was to possibly put a roundabout there to actually slow traffic down going into the school zone. So, you know, there's a lot of options there, but I think we have to make sure that the, you know, safety is paramount. I think that's the key thing. The parking lot we also talked about could then double up possibly at the end for a farmer's market or something for whatever events we were having as an open space. We have a grant, I think, remaining of about $300,000 for the
Yeah, we had overall a grant of $500,000 for Spirit Park kind of upgrades. Part of it's being used up as part of the ongoing process outside, but we do have some funds left over.
So I think as most people in this audience will know that one of the big things is that we're going to, because the septic field was up, the old septic field was up near the gazebo, it became very mushy up there. There was no grade to that. So that's going to be all taken down. So there will be a gradual grade. And again, we've talked to our esteemed members of the garden club and gave them a tour that, there is going to be some tree removal in that area to really coordinate it in. And some of the trees weren't doing very well anyway because of the ground. So we're going to fix all that up with grading. And then we need to also finish off the new septic field. It still isn't finished, top dressed or anything like that, so that needs to happen. So I think this is a great thing to get out into the public and start having the discussion. I get a lot of people come up to me and ask me, when is Ravenswood going through, and the other thing is also it's been our purpose all along that we re-tree this area as much as possible and bring it back with trees that we've already been doing some research that are more tolerant to the climate change that we seem to be experiencing. So I think what would be great is to get a big placard that we put up like we have here right now and just put it up into the lobby and say, and maybe we get a email page saying, please provide your comments and what you'd like to see in that park. It's, we want to get on it fairly soon and use some of the funding, but there's going to be some engineering that's going to go on. So I really appreciate this is, a lot of people are going, oh, is it all going to be a parking lot? No, it was never proposed to be a parking lot. But we were going to expand the parking lot in where the existing Ravenswood Road is there and move the entrance there. So anyway, I think it's great. I'll just open up Councillor Webering.
Yeah, I like most of what I see. To me, the parking lot looks big, like really big. I'd rather see it, maybe the end cut off, have that grass, and then incorporate more parking on the road. Like when we, add that multi-use trail, like right beside that, have a parking strip, and then you just cross the road there'd probably be 2 crossing points. I do share the residents' concern about the access point of Ravenswood Drive. As to what Mayor McEwen said, it has to be safe. And that's a tricky area where it's coming out currently. I don't know if I'd go further down or further up. Probably further up would be the solution. And also, the part that was cleared, are we going to be leveling that? Because it's quite a hump there.
More than likely, I think that would go through the design process of ensuring that it's appropriately graded for the kids who would be using that area. So likely, especially if Ravenswood goes through into Sunnyside,
Right.
there's a significant amount of grading that needs to happen. So a hump would be taken out of that point as well.
Right. And I still think about that window that we put in the idea was to look out onto this beautiful Spirit Park. So I really want to try and keep working with that vision, just see green spaces wherever possible. So I think moving some of the parking around I'd be in favor of that if possible, because it just looks like a big parking lot. And, parking lots aren't used 99% of the time. They're only used during events and that sort of thing. Other than that, I think I like it. I think the kids would like the pump track, and I like the idea of a natural forest, sort of a future area that we could expand into. Yeah, I like it.
Councillor Richardson.
I echo what everybody else says. I have to admit, I was confused by the little tiny golf green with 7 sand bunkers on it, which turns out to be a sign. Is that the information sign or just welcome to the park sign?
I think right now it's more of a welcome to the park sign.
Okay, because if it's going to be an information sign, it should probably go at the intersection of East and Sunnyside.
Can I ask for clarification? Would you like it to be putting green and a bunker?
No. And then with respect to parking, yeah, it does look big. How many sites is that?
I think it's approximately 50 to 60 stalls.
Is there any work being done so far on the number of stalls recommended for this facility if it starts doing external events?
Yeah, to some degree. We have an occupancy, I think, in this room of 350 people maximum. I don't think you'd quite get there, but in an event of, say, 100 people, you'd be looking at, 0.5 stalls per person showing up. So that's where we're kind of around that 50 to 60 mark right now.
Okay, so the size is about right for the use of the facility, but to go along with Councillor Reverink, based on we have this nice window, if we're going to shrink it at all, we could probably shrink it at an angle or something, and then you look at more grass or something.
I can make beautiful parking lots.
Fair enough. Well, we could put trees in it and tiles like the Germans do.
Totally,
I like
there is
those.
some of that these days. That the parking lot shouldn't just be painted asphalt. It should actually have green facilities within it to try and lessen the
Actually,
impact.
I like that idea. I used to go to Germany all the time, and their parking lots were those essentially on flat cinder blocks and grow grass and whatever. So they were really nice. Actually, that's a good idea. I like that.
Councillor Cryer.
Well, to answer your question, I think it has legs. Yeah. I agree with the parking. It looks very like large and kind of taking away from the whole visual of what we're trying to create. And I like the idea of the cinder blocks, but also even just, a little like you see in parking lots with kind of a median with a few trees, kind of to break it up. But also incorporating a little on the off of Sunnyside, like we spoke about, kind of almost a pull away, and definitely a concern with the safety coming off of the new location of Ravenswood. Calming circle is, I mean, that's not anything that we'd ever spoken of. I think that's has potential, but again, not a traffic expert. But I like it. Yeah, I like I like it. I think it's a great start. I guess we'll decide that what next, the timing of the engagement, where we go.
We have a recommendation. I don't know if Michelle wants to read out the recommendation.
Well, I think before we get there, I think one of the things that's I will be bringing up in my mayor's report is where what's been referred to as the putting green, and a fairly significant portion of what is looking as the parking lot will probably be utilized as a staging area for development of the new fire hall. So that would probably be a location, because they cannot utilize the full site of the fire hall because of the high pressure gas line there. So I think just getting it out there and starting to have some conversation is the ideal thing to do at this point in time.
So I just realized that Councillor is off the screen right now as well. I don't know if he's wanted to talk as well. Trowbridge. There you go.
Go ahead,
I didn't forget about you.
Go ahead, Councillor Trowbridge.
Corner down to the level of road. We should keep it clear of visual obstructions. I even think it would be nice to have lineal turnout parking around that margin, maybe a 20-foot margin, and it would serve to open up that corner and make it a much safer corner for both traffic and pedestrians. But in general terms, I do like it. I heard the comments about the parking lot. I think the parking lot should be enlarged to include all of the green space and then put a racetrack on it. But other than that, I think it's quite good.
Good. So do you have a recommendation?
That council directs staff to engage with the community regarding the Ravenswood area of the Spirit Park concept plan.
Good. Someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Any further discussion? See none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Okay, a few things on my mayor's report. This last week, we welcomed White Rock Municipal staff and gave them a tour of the new Village Hub as they tour in the need of a municipal building, and they were very, very impressed and really blown away at us coming in on budget and also the quality of the work. So it was quite a nice tour. I thoroughly enjoyed it. This Friday at the Metro Vancouver Board meeting, approval to release the $500,000 for design and budget of the 2 new Sassmouth fire halls will be coming forth. That's Mayor Ross and Mayor and myself will be voting on that. And then I just also wanted to, the Anmore advisor has come out in the mail, and on it, just again, we had this going previously, but then we didn't have a building. But Friday, coffee with the mayor. Come and sit down and let's have a coffee. All scheduling for that goes through Carmen at the Village Hall. So please look forward to sitting down, and we may not always agree, but it's always great to talk about things. So that's all I have. Any councillors' reports? Councillor Cryer.
Thank you. I have our first CC committee meeting on Thursday. Very excited to welcome some returning committee members and some new members. So the first meeting is formalities with Ms. Shell joining to give orientation, but just our discussion will be what we'd like to accomplish this year. A couple of things that I have that I'm going to bring up. One would be the return of our dementia cafes, which we did prior to the pandemic that were quite successful. And the second thing we'll be looking at are the Anmore archives and how we're going to, what we have in storage, what we're going to do with them, how we'll display them in the new hub. So looking forward to planning some events here in the hub based on information we get from community members.
Good. Thank you. Move on to our Chief Administrative Officer's report. Ms. Elbert.
Thank you. Just one further thing to add is that we are currently now recruiting for our Board of Variance. So that term is for a 3-year term, and the Board of Variance is a legislative requirement for local governments that have a zoning bylaw and in some instances vary setbacks and some other small things related to the zoning bylaw. So you can contact Ms. Shell if you would like to apply for that board and have any questions regarding it. Thank you.
Good. We have some committee and boards, the minutes of the Sassmouth Volunteer Fire Department Board of Trustee meeting minutes, some correspondence. Public question period. Please, when we're asking questions of the public, be respectful that this is regarding village business. Can you turn, is it on?
There we are. Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you for hearing me. I'm Sterling Sunley, 2630 Sunnyside Road. I mentioned earlier about my concerns about the planning for the exit or the new egress from Ravenswood. And there are a number of concerns, and while I respect that this is a concept, it is a one-page drawing, and I think there's a lot more flesh that needs to be put on those bones. The mayor answered a letter that I had written to him, and I appreciate that. We don't always agree on everything, but I do appreciate you taking the time to do it. And one of the things you said is, and I agree with it, says, a straighter road alignment would be safer for traffic and pedestrians with respect to the Ravenswood Drive extension. Well, to keep with the golf analogy, it's a dog leg in that picture that we saw tonight. And it's anything but straight. And I think if it went out straight, as was initially planned, and I realize that may require some changes to the drawing and things like that, it will be higher up, and as such, there will be more space between where the exit is and the cars that you can't see that are coming up Sunnyside, and you'll have a much clearer view of what's who is coming down Sunnyside from the north and what vehicles are turning at the intersection. So I simply want to support or add to what I said earlier, which is I think that it's a public safety issue very much, and I think there would be liability potentially for us if knowing that you can't see down that road in either direction really would potentially put the village at some risk. So I would encourage them to take the time and spend the money, and if that isn't practical, for heaven's sake, council, walk down the road and have a look during the daytime and see what you see, because as Councillor Wernick mentioned, you cannot see. There are blind spots there. And I don't know whether the individual who worked on, Mr. Boyd, you worked on the design, but I'm not sure whether you had a look, and I'm not faulting you, I'm just saying, I'm not sure if you had a look, but if you stand at the end of my driveway and look down and look up, you'll see what I mean.
I can answer your question directly if you'd like. Yes, we've checked it, and we've checked the visibility as per TAC guideline requirements, that it meets or exceeds all of those requirements as part of the design. So one of the things I would say would be the way it is today, it would be different once it's built, because one of the things you can't see is because the mound is completely
I understand that.
So all
Yeah.
that need to be removed
Yeah.
and what have you to allow that.
Okay. Well, maybe what I'll do too is I can take some pictures that might help, and I'll certainly table those with council, because I do think that there is, there are other points of view on this
My
issue.
suggestion would be to put in an email.
Absolutely,
put out-
yeah. And then
that'd
it can be
great.
circulated,
Yeah.
certainly. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Do you want name and address? It's just a quick suggestion or question. Are you that formal?
We need name and address, yeah.
Yeah, Lisa Johnston, 180 Hemlock. I was just thinking when you were talking about your community engagement, and it actually popped into my mind, even in an event like today when you're talking about Spirit Park, is it possible to have, you probably don't have the staff and the funds, but maybe get a high school student or something that can quickly go on, create a Google QR code? So when you have an event here, when everybody leaves, they're not going to go home and fill out their paperwork and necessarily submit something to you, but I'm going to take my phone and I'm going to scan. It's going to take me to a quick page, answer 5 or 6 questions. Did you like what happened tonight? What do you think about the park? What do you think about the parking lot? Submit, and it's done. And it goes to you. So it's just something to think about, which may encourage quick community engagement. We've all got our phones with us all the time, right? But if we have to go home and fill out an email or something. Okay.
Any other public questions?
Jurgen Durkton, 1815A East Road. Just a couple questions. Is the Murray printing press in storage on site in this building? Yes or no?
No.
How much are we paying per month in storage fees to keep it out of view?
I don't have that information in front of me this evening.
Do you have a ballpark figure or something?
No, I'm sorry, I do not.
Okay, thank you. Also, a couple other questions. Does Arcona really need to plan a 25,000 square foot community center when we already have a 6,000 square foot hub? I'm just wondering, it's just,
No idea.
a kilometer down the road, is it necessary?
I just said no idea.
Okay, thank you. The other question is, I'm just kind of confused at what's going on today. I'm wondering how the village actually defines the term planning. Did the village plan to build the hub and then sort of go, oops, we need more parking? Or did they plan parking at the same time as the hub?
So when we went through the process, previously we looked at the funding allocation and we didn't have enough funds, so we had to make cost-cutting exercises. So we had to remove part of the parking requirements at that time.
And so you had to remove what?
We didn't have the budget to build everything that we wanted at the
So,
same time.
but did you plan it from the start?
There were original plans to have more parking in and around here, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other before we adjourn?
Nancy Maloney, 1724 East Road, and several questions also. For some years, can everyone hear? Loud enough? Yes? Okay. For some years, Anmore has been experiencing significantly serious bear-related issues. The past village response has been to send out reminders regarding the storage and collection of all bear attractants. But this approach has not been at all effective. In fact, it's been, well, really an abysmal failure. So I would like to request that the Environment Committee be given the direction to pursue Anmore as being certified as a bear smart community. So there are some number of municipalities in British Columbia which have achieved this bear smart certification. Unfortunately, Anmore is not one of these, but we could be. So now is the time for such an initiative before more bears are destroyed. So to not pursue this issue, sort of like long after we begin having problems, as always happens again. So could this be done via Paul's, I know Paul is the chair of the Environment Committee. Could this be done ASAP? And if not, my question is, why does our mayor and council want these problems to actually continue that we've experienced in recent years?
Do you have any other questions at all?
I have other questions, but I'd like an answer to this question.
List them all out and then I'll.
Okay. And also, could Mayor McEwen, could you please provide an update on the village plan to honor the contributions of our former Mayor Weinberg? And I would like to add that it's unfortunate that such recognition was not done last summer when we crested, while former Mayor Weinberg could have known of such a symbol of appreciation, and now it's obviously too late. And also, through the chair, related to Polly's committee, okay, speak into the mic. Okay, better?
Yeah.
Better? Okay, so Polly, the provincial accessibility plan requirements have been assigned to your committee, but this wasn't one of the items mentioned in things that your committee plans to take on. And Anmore is already way past the deadline of when this should have been done. So my question through the chair to Polly is, and hopefully this is the case, that the required provincial accessibility plan will be happening through this community engagement committee.
Thank you for the question. If you would look at the agenda, which was posted, I believe, today, Michelle?
I did look. I have looked.
It is on the agenda. You will see that that is an agenda item for us Thursday night.
Okay, very good.
And I'll quickly answer the other two questions. The bearware, big focus of ours, we've always done each year. We actually have put, we've actually got staff out in the evenings issuing tickets and bylaw people, and I know Miss Elrick can talk about that. I will finish off the passing of former Mayor Hal Weinberg. There's discussions going on with the family right now. That's all I can say.
Okay, and I'll add.
Please, just let Miss Elrick finish.
Thank you, through the mayor. I can also add in relation to the bear issues that we have been working closely with Tri-City Bear Aware, which is the same organization, a volunteer organization that our neighboring communities are using on outreach and communication, and we will continue to work with them as well on education for the community on reducing attractants.
Good, thank you.
What is the backup plan, as if is the case in times past, that this has not resolved our bear problem issue in Anmore? Anmore is somewhat different from the other municipalities. Is there a backup plan?
When I've talked to conservation, they've been quite pleased. So
Sorry?
When I've talked to conservation, they've been quite pleased with the steps that we're taking. So.
Sorry, say again?
When I've talked to conservation, they have been very pleased with the approaches that we've been taking. Thank you.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Anything else? Okay, motion to adjourn. Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.